I started preaching in July of 1981, and my mother's sister, one of her sisters, were um, a member of the, let me see, West 100th Street Baptist Church in Atlanta, where the late Reverend Dr. David Abernathy was the pastor. And so my aunt was a very progressive type person, and she always wanted me to be around very influential people. So one day, she asked him, because they were good friends, asked him if I could come to the church and preach as a young preacher. I guess that meant preaching probably less than a year. And he said yes, and I'll let your nephew come and preach one of the 8 o'clock services. And she said no, I want him to preach the 11 o'clock service when most of the people are there. So he decided he would agree to that, but before he would let me come and preach, he wanted to spend some time with me. And so, sometime prior to me coming to preach that Sunday, I had the opportunity of sitting down with him for probably about an hour, just sharing about things in the ministry. I didn't think too much of it at that time, but as I've been in the ministry and as time has passed, I just valued that particular conversation more and more. And one of the things that he told me was he was saying that there are various kinds of people in your church. Some are educated, some are not educated. And he focused on a term that he used. He called this lady, which could be in any church, that would not be educated, but just love the Lord. And he called her Aunt Jane. And his thing was, he said, I don't care about the lawyers, the teachers, and other people that are in your church. Don't forget to feed Aunt Jane before you go. And what that meant was, Aunt Jane was not concerned, he said, about Greek, Hebrew, and all of the fancy words. All Aunt Jane wanted to know was, how do I make it from one Sunday to the next? And he said, don't ever forget that there is always an Aunt Jane in your church. And she needs to know that. So make sure that you inspire her. And so there was another lesson that he taught me about. There was an older man in the church who couldn't hear very well. And he wouldn't pay his offering to anybody but Dr. Abernathy. He said because he couldn't understand what anybody else was saying. But what he didn't realize was Dr. Abernathy was speaking through a PA system. So that's the only reason why he could really hear, understand what he was saying. But he would come to the pulpit every Sunday and give him the offering, would not put it in an offering pan, because he said, I don't trust those other people. I can't hear what they're saying. I don't understand what they're saying. He said, but I can hear you. You're the only person in this church that I can understand. And so I'm giving you my offering to you. So I guess over the years, I've reflected back many times about the lesson that I learned from Dr. Abernathy. I think it was November 1976, my grandmother on my mother's side passed away, and he was the pastor of my aunt at the time, and he came to the funeral. And after the funeral, it is a cultural thing with black people to have what is known as a repast after the funeral service. So we'll go either to somebody's house or you stay at the church and everybody served dinner. Well, we went back to my grandmother's house, and Dr. Abernathy came by the house and he stayed. Well, my best friend from growing up is a guy by the name of Gregory Levitt, who owns a funeral home in Conyers, and his father was handling my grandmother's service. And he said to me, he said, well, I can't believe that Dr. Abernathy stayed here hanging out with us guys. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, this guy is a civil rights icon, and he's head of the SCLC, and I just can't believe that he's hanging out in Conyers with us. I said, man, that's no big deal. I said, he's just Aunt Annie's pastor. And so that's just the way I saw him over the years. It's just Aunt Annie's pastor. And now with the coming out of the Selma movie, I'm just so glad that I had an opportunity to spend some time with him.